It's a cold February night in 1838. Jane Alsop hears a pounding at her door. A man's voice calls out, "Bring a light, miss." "We've caught him in the lane. Bring a candle quickly." Jane rushes out with a taper, but when she hands it over, the stranger throws back his cloak. His eyes glow like red coals. He opens his mouth, and a jet of blue-white flame erupts into her face. Metal claws tear at her gown. She screams. Her sisters drag her back inside, slamming the door. This wasn't a Gothic novel. This wasn't theatre. It was reported in the London papers, investigated by the police, and never solved. London, in the late 1830s, was a city balanced between old shadows and new industry. Gas lamps flickered against sooty brick. The streets smelled of coal smoke and horse manure. Pickpockets prowled crowded markets, and women walking home alone moved quickly, wary of drunks and rogues. Into this uneasy setting came a stranger who seemed to leap out of nightmares. Newspapers described him as tall and thin, cloaked like a gentleman. Beneath the cloak, some witnesses swore he wore a tight-fitting suit, like oilskin. His hands were tipped with sharp claws, and his eyes glowed red in the darkness. And most chilling of all, some said he could spit blue and white fire. But what truly set him apart and gave him his name was the way he moved. Witnesses claimed he could vault fences taller than a man, clear garden walls in a single bound, and vanish across rooftops like no human could. The press dubbed him Spring-Heeled Jack. The first widely reported attack came in October 1837. Mary Stevens, a young servant, was walking home to her employer's house after visiting her parents in Battersea. Her route took her along Lavender Hill, a respectable area, but one that turned eerie after dark. Suddenly, from a dark passage, a cloaked figure lunged at her. He grabbed her tightly, clawing at her clothes, with hands described as cold and clammy as those of a corpse. He forced his lips against her face, scratching her skin with sharp nails. Mary's screams echoed down the lane. Neighbors rushed out, but her attacker fled. By the time they reached her, trembling and disheveled, he had already melted into the night. The next day, the figure struck again, this time leaping into the path of a horse-drawn carriage. The startled horses panicked, crashing into a wall. The coachman was thrown, badly injured. Witnesses swore they saw the same cloaked man laughing before bounding over a 9-foot wall and vanishing into the shadows. Mary's case spread quickly through her neighborhood. Women whispered about a prowler who could leap like a demon, and men organized searches, but found nothing. The mystery figure had struck, and London was officially on edge. By January 1838, rumors swirled so thickly that even London's civic leaders could not ignore them. At the Mansion House, Lord Mayor Sir John Cowan addressed a packed crowd. He read aloud a letter from a resident of Peckham describing a mischievous person in the guise of a ghost, bear, or devil, who had been frightening young women and knocking on doors across the city. At first, Cowan dismissed it as a pantomime display, a ridiculous prank. But then he admitted he had received multiple letters describing the same thing. He told the assembly, "The creature has succeeded in depriving 7 ladies of their senses, some of whom are not likely to recover." Police were ordered to investigate, and rewards were considered for Jack's capture. But instead of calming the city, Cowan's statement inflamed it. Within days, newspapers from the Times to penny dreadful pamphlets were screaming about Spring-Heeled Jack. Suddenly, Londoners were convinced he lurked around every corner. The panic became horrifyingly real for one young woman. On the evening of February 19th, 1838, Jane Alsop was at home in Old Ford when she heard frantic knocking. A man's voice shouted through the door, "I'm a policeman. We've caught Spring-Heeled Jack in the lane. Bring me a light." Jane, eager to help, grabbed a candle and stepped outside. She expected to see a constable in uniform. Instead, the man threw off his cloak, and what she saw burned into her memory. His eyes glowed red, his mouth opened, and a blast of blue-white flame erupted toward her face. He clawed at her dress with sharp metallic talons, tearing the fabric and cutting into her skin. Jane screamed, trying to escape, but he held on tightly. Her sisters, alarmed by the commotion, rushed outside. Together, they dragged Jane back into the house, slamming the door shut. The attacker vanished into the night. The next morning, newspapers carried the headline, "The Late Outrage at Old Ford." Jane's description of the attacker, fiery breath, metal claws, glowing eyes, shocked the city. Police quickly arrested a suspect, a man named Thomas Milbank, overheard in a pub, bragging that he was Spring-Heeled Jack. Milbank's trial became a sensation. Brought before Lambeth Street magistrates, he insisted it had all been a drunken boast. Jane Alsop stood firm. She swore the man who attacked her had breathed fire, something Milbank could not do. That alone was enough to collapse the case. Detective James Lee, one of London's most respected officers, later summarized his frustration. Spring-Heeled Jack, he said, was a practical joker of the most dangerous description. But practical joker or not, no conviction came. Once again, Spring-Heeled Jack had slipped through the hands of the law. Just 9 days after Jane's ordeal, another victim emerged. On February 28, 1838, 17-year-old Lucy Scales and her sister were walking home through Limehouse's Green Dragon Alley. It was dark, narrow, and lined with warehouses. A cloaked figure stepped out ahead of them. Without a word, he opened his mouth and spat a stream of blue flame into Lucy's face. She collapsed immediately, writhing in violent fits described by her sister as convulsions. The attacker, tall and thin, with a gentlemanly appearance, calmly walked away, carrying what looked like a bullseye lantern, the same type used by police. He vanished before help arrived. Lucy's case was reported in the Morning Post. Police investigated thoroughly, questioning several men in the neighborhood, but concluded there was no satisfactory evidence to hold anyone. 2 young women attacked within weeks, both describing fire-breathing and claws. The city's panic boiled over. Just 9 days after Jane's ordeal, another victim emerged. On February 28, 1838, 17-year-old Lucy Scales and her sister were walking home through Limehouse's Green Dragon Alley. It was dark, narrow, and lined with warehouses. A cloaked figure stepped out ahead of them. Without a word, he opened his mouth and spat a stream of blue flame into Lucy's face. She collapsed immediately, writhing in violent fits, described by her sister as convulsions. The attacks of early 1838 were the height of the panic, but not the end of Spring-Heeled Jack. Throughout the 1840s, reports trickled in from towns across England. Some described him clawing at windows, others leaping across fields in impossible bounds. In the 1870s, soldiers at Aldershot Garrison claimed they encountered him. One sentry said Jack leapt at him, slapping his face with a cold hand before springing away. The soldier fired his musket, but Jack only laughed and bounded off into the night. And in 1904, nearly 70 years after Mary Stevens's attack, the legend surfaced in Liverpool. Witnesses swore they saw a cloaked figure bounding across rooftops, gathering a crowd of terrified onlookers. With one final leap, he disappeared. Whether these later stories were genuine, exaggerated, or pure folklore, they cemented Jack as more than just a London terror. He had become an enduring legend. So who, or what, was Spring-Heeled Jack? Theory 1. The aristocratic prankster. The Marquis of Waterford, a reckless nobleman notorious for drunken violence, was a prime suspect. He lived near the earliest sightings and was known for cruel practical jokes. His death in 1859 coincided with the decline in reports, but historians admit there is no proof he was Jack. Theory 2. One attacker, many imitators. Scholars argue that the first wave in 1837 to 38 may have been the work of a single individual, perhaps even the Marquis, but once newspapers spread the tale, pranksters and criminals across England began copying it. Theory 3. Mass hysteria. The Victorian press thrived on sensational stories. Penny dreadfuls turned Jack into a villainous anti-hero, exaggerating his powers. Fear spread so widely that ordinary crimes or accidents were reinterpreted as his work. Theory 4. Trickery and technology. Some believe the fire was created with chemicals like phosphorus. The claws could have been sharpened metal tools. As for the leaps, maybe they were exaggerated by frightened witnesses, or perhaps aided by crude spring-heeled boots, a risky invention being tinkered with at the time. None of these theories have ever been proven, and that uncertainty is exactly why his legend survived. Spring-Heeled Jack represents more than just a mystery attacker. He embodied Victorian fears, the vulnerability of women, the limits of the police, and the lurking dangers of a rapidly growing city. He leapt from newspapers into penny dreadful novels, onto stage plays, and eventually into comics and folklore. He was the bogeyman of the industrial age, a figure who blurred the line between reality and nightmare. And he was never caught. A knock at the door, a man demanding a light, a sudden flame, and claws in the dark. Was Spring-Heeled Jack a prankster with cruel tricks, a violent nobleman, a phantom of mass hysteria, or was he something stranger? The truth has never been found, and maybe that's why his name still lingers.